The envelope lies on the kitchen table like a dare. Gold-trimmed edges catch the sunlight that spills through the blinds, and the embossed letters seem to shine brighter than the rest of the room. Together with their families, I don't touch it right away. Instead, I stand there, coffee cooling in my hand, staring as if the paper might burst into flames on its own. But it doesn't. It just sits there, waiting, heavy with all the weight of a family I never asked for, and a love I don't know if I still owe. Finally, I slide my thumb under the flap and peel it open. The wax seal cracks like a gunshot dot inside. Flowers twine around printed words. A dress code, a date, a promise of music and laughter. My sister's name, her groom's name, and mine written in careful cursive near the bottom. We request your presence. But it isn't a request. Not really, Dot. It's an ultimatum dressed up in satin and roses. Dot, my father's voice still echoes from the last phone call. Harsh and absolute. If you don't show up for your sister, don't bother asking me for tuition again. You can choose family, or you can choose pride. But you can't have both. The words sting even now. Tuition, pride, family. 3 words, sharp enough to cut. I set the invitation back down, but it seems to burn through the table. Through me. The clock ticks. The house is quiet. The way quiet sometimes roars louder than sound. My textbooks sit piled by the window, spines cracked, sticky notes fluttering. They look at me like old friends, patient but worried, as if they know their place in my life depends on this choice. Go to the wedding, keep my father's check, swallow my resentment, dress in clothes that don't feel mine, smile for photographs that will freeze me in a role I no longer play, or refuse, buy my own books with what little money I have, face the uncertain world without my father's handouts, without his chains disguised as generosity. I rub my forehead, pressing hard, as though force alone can make the decision disappear. The memory comes back before I can stop it. I am 16 again, standing in the hallway, eavesdropping as my parents argue. My father's voice is cold thunder. My sister, crying in her room, blames me for not defending her. But how do you defend someone when your own voice has been trained into silence? That was the night I promised myself I'd leave. Go far. Build a life on my own terms. And now, here I am, held hostage by a piece of paper dressed in gold. The phone buzzes. I don't have to look to know. It's him. My father. The name flashing on the screen feels like a verdict. I let it ring. Once, twice, 5 times. The buzzing fills the room, then cuts out, leaving silence heavier than before. A voicemail icon appears. I don't press play. Instead, I whisper into the empty air. I can't keep choosing you over me. The sound of my own voice surprises me. It sounds certain, strong, even. Outside, children's laughter floats up from the street, light and careless. A neighbor's wind chimes sing in the breeze. Life is moving, indifferent to my crisis. I sink into the couch, the invitation still clutched in my hand. I trace the letters of my sister's name, wondering if she wrote them, if she meant them. We haven't spoken in months. Maybe she wants me there. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe I'm just a placeholder in the family picture, someone to complete the frame. Tears threaten, but don't fall. I'm too practiced in swallowing them back. I close my eyes. I imagine walking into the hall, everyone's eyes turning. My father's approval hidden behind a stiff smile. My mother's relief, my sister's awkward gratitude. A photographer snapping pictures of us arranged in careful lies. And then I imagine something else. I see myself in a bookstore, hands brushing along spines, the smell of paper and ink filling my lungs. I see myself with books stacked in my arms, bought with my own money, even if it empties my wallet. I see myself studying late into the night, exhausted but free, My future stitched together by choices that are finally mine. The second vision makes my chest ache in a different way. Not fear, not duty, but possibility. The phone buzzes again. This time, it's a text. Remember what I said. Don't test me. I stare at the words until they blur. My chest tightens. Anger rises hot and fast, chasing away the sadness. How many times has he thought love meant control? How many times have I bent under it? I open my wallet. Inside, a few crumpled bills, a debit card with a nearly empty balance, a library receipt I've been carrying like a charm. Not much, not enough. But maybe enough to start. I grab my keys. The invitation slides from my lap and lands on the floor, face down. I don't pick it up. The bookstore is only a 15-minute walk, but today it feels like a pilgrimage. The late afternoon sun dips lower, spilling amber across the sidewalks. My sneakers scuff against the pavement as I carry the weight of my decision with each step. When I push open the door, a bell jingles overhead, soft and welcoming. The scent of old paper and fresh ink rushes to greet me, wrapping around me like a long-lost embrace. The aisles are quiet, just the whisper of pages turning somewhere deeper inside. I exhale. For the first time all day, the tension in my shoulders eases. I wander between shelves, fingers trailing across spines. History, philosophy, poetry. My eyes linger on titles I can't afford but want desperately. I pick up a thick novel, weigh it in my hands, feel the gravity of its promise. Somewhere behind me, footsteps echo. I glance over my shoulder. A stranger, tall, with dark hair falling into curious eyes, pauses 2 aisles away. He's holding a book too, his thumb tucked between the pages as if he'd been caught mid-thought. Our eyes meet for just a second, but it's enough to make something stir inside me, unexpected and warm. I look away quickly, cheeks burning, heart pounding louder than it should. I don't know why, but the moment feels important. As if stepping into this store, refusing that invitation, choosing books over bargains, has opened a door I didn't know existed. The stranger lingers in the corner of my vision, not moving, just noticing. And for the first time in years, I feel like maybe someone sees me. Not the version of me my father insists on. Not the placeholder in family portraits. Just me. I clutch the book to my chest. My heart is still racing, though I can't tell if it's from defiance or from the way the stranger's gaze felt. Either way, I know one thing. My life shifted today. Quietly, but irrevocably. The air inside the bookstore smells of dust and possibility. Paper and ink, silence and comfort. It's nothing like the polished perfection of my sister's wedding invitation. Here, the shelves stretch tall, their wooden frames leaning under the weight of forgotten stories. I run my fingers across the spines. Leather, cardboard, frayed paper. Some books seem to hum with age, others with newness. I don't know which I want more, the permanence of history or the thrill of beginnings. My hand hovers indecisively. That's when I hear it, a voice. Hard choice. I turn. He's standing a few feet away, a book balanced casually in his palm. Dark hair falls over his forehead, and his eyes, steady, curious, unafraid, meet mine like he's known me longer than a moment. His smile is small but warm, like sunlight breaking through a curtain. Caught, I stumble for words. I can't decide. He tilts his head, amused. Between? I hold up 2 books. One is thick, a collection of essays on philosophy. The other thin, a worn poetry anthology. Brains or heart, he says, nodding toward them. That's always the fight, isn't it? A laugh slips out of me before I can stop it. It feels strange, laughter in the middle of a day that's been weighed down by threats and choices. But his tone makes it easy. I look at him again. Really look. His shirt is rolled at the sleeves, collar loose. His stance is relaxed, like he belongs here. And maybe he does. I guess I need both, I answer, hugging the books closer. His smile deepens. Then maybe you don't need to choose. We wander into the same aisle, as though some invisible current pulls us there. He doesn't hover, doesn't press too close, but he doesn't drift away either. His presence is steady, grounding, like a lighthouse in fog. I glance at the book he's carrying. What about you? Easy choice? He flips it toward me. The cover reads the collected short stories of Chekhov. Safe bet, he says. Short stories. If life interrupts, at least you've finished something. I raise an eyebrow. Is life interrupting you often? His laugh is soft, almost shy. More than I'd like to admit. For a moment, silence fills the aisle. Not uncomfortable, more like a pause in music, where the next note hangs suspended in air. My phone buzzes. My father's name lights up the screen. The warmth drains from me in an instant. I silence it quickly, but he's already noticed. You don't have to answer, he says gently. Not prying, just offering. I swallow, throat tight. It's complicated, isn't it always? His voice holds no judgment, only understanding. Something inside me stirs. It's absurd. I don't even know his name, and yet he seems to see the fracture lines in me that no one else ever notices. I shift the books in my arms. So, do you always talk to strangers in bookstores? He grins. Only the ones who look like they're fighting wars in the poetry section. Heat rushes to my cheeks. That obvious? Not obvious, just loud in a quiet way. He studies me for a moment, his gaze steady but not invasive. Like someone who carries too much inside. My breath catches. His words feel like a mirror I didn't want to face, yet needed. I deflect. That's a bold thing to say to someone you just met. His smile softens. Sometimes truth doesn't need time. It just needs a moment. I look down at the poetry book again, flipping it open. The words blur for a second before focusing. And still, after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. The ache in my chest deepens. I don't know if it's from the poem or from him standing there, watching me like I matter. I close the book. I'll take this one. Heart over brains, he says, approving. Maybe just this once. We drift toward the counter together, though neither of us names it aloud. His steps match mine, slow, unhurried. The clerk rings up my book, the register's ding punctuating the stillness. As I hand over the cash, he speaks again. So, what's your name? I tell him. The syllables sound different, somehow, spoken in this place. To him. He repeats it under his breath, as though testing how it feels in his mouth. Then he smiles. I'm Adrian, Adrian. The name lands like a bookmark, saving a page I didn't know I'd want to return to. Outside, the late sun has begun to fade, streaking the sky with orange and pink. I clutch the paper bag with my book inside, feeling its weight like a promise. Adrian holds his own purchase loosely, almost carelessly, as though books are already part of his skin. We walk in the same direction without planning it. The sidewalk hums with evening life. Cars passing, laughter spilling from a cafe, the air alive with scents of coffee and bread. You live nearby? He asks, sort of. You? He nods. A few blocks. Then, after a beat, funny how people can live so close and not know it. Something about his words feels heavier than casual conversation. Like he's not just talking about geography. At the corner, our paths split. He pauses, turning toward me. Listen, he says, hesitant now. I don't want to assume, but maybe I'll see you here again? The question is light, but beneath it, I hear something more. Hope. I bite my lip, surprised by how much I want to say yes. Yeah, maybe. He grins, and for a moment, it feels like the whole evening tilts toward possibility. I walk away with my heart pounding, the bag pressed to my chest. Each step feels different, lighter. I think about Adrian's eyes, about his quiet confidence, about the way he seemed to understand what I couldn't say aloud. For the first time in weeks, I don't think about the wedding, or my father, or the tuition that looms like a storm cloud. I think about shelves, about secrets, about how sometimes the smallest exchanges can shift entire worlds. At home, the invitation still lies face down on the floor, forgotten. My phone buzzes again. Another missed call, another voicemail. I don't listen. Instead, I open the poetry book. The page I'd flipped to earlier waits for me. Patient. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. I trace the words with my fingertip. For the first time, the sky doesn't feel so far away, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I see Adrian's smile. The bookstore hums with the soft rustle of turning pages and the low thud of footsteps against aged wooden floors. Afternoon light filters through the tall windows, spilling warmth across the spines of forgotten novels. And then there it is again. That smile. He stands near the poetry shelf, holding a book as though it might fall apart in his hands if he pressed too hard. His eyes lift, catching mine, and the corner of his lips curve into something both hesitant and certain. The quiet between us bends, and I feel myself pulled toward him, as if some thread has tightened and refuses to let go. Back again? I ask, trying to sound casual, though my pulse stumbles over itself. He chuckles softly. I told you. This place feels like a secret garden, and I keep hoping you'll be here. Guess I'm lucky. The words land heavier than they should. My chest feels lighter and weighted all at once, as though he's dropped a stone into my heart, and it's making ripples. We fall into easy conversation, skimming through books neither of us intend to buy. It's nothing monumental. A debate about whether poetry is best read aloud or silently. A half-serious argument about coffee versus tea. Laughter that lingers longer than the sentences deserve. But underneath the ordinary, something extraordinary hums. Time folds in on itself. I only realize the hour when the shopkeeper flicks the lights once, his unspoken reminder that closing time has arrived. We step outside together, the air cool against our cheeks, and suddenly the night feels electric. I should probably head home. I murmur. He nods but doesn't move. Same. But would you mind if I texted you? Just sometimes? I don't want this to be the last time I see you. There's no hesitation in me, only relief. I'd like that. The first text comes that very night. Him. I'm realizing I forgot to ask. Coffee or tea? Need to know where you truly stand. Me. Coffee. Always coffee. Him. Good. That means we're compatible. I'd have had to reconsider if you said tea. The banter is light, playful, but beneath it a current runs deeper. That night stretches into morning, with messages tumbling back and forth until my phone grows warm in my hands. He tells me about the scar near his eyebrow, the one from falling off his bike at 9. I tell him about the way I used to hide in the library as a kid, between shelves where no one could see me. And slowly, the texts slip from small talk into confession. Me. Sometimes I feel like I'm made of glass. Like people see through me, but never actually see me. A pause. Then him. I don't think you're glass. I think you're a book. Most people skim, but some of us stay and read every page. The words blur for a moment, my throat tightening. No one has ever said something like that to me. Days become weeks. The bookstore transforms into ours a quiet refuge, a pocket of the world carved out just for two. We claim the small corner table near the back, our voices hushed but our laughter echoing. Do you realize? He he says one afternoon, flipping through a battered copy of Neruda, that every time we sit here, the same woman passes by the window? Same time, same brisk walk, same red scarf. I follow his gaze, and there she is. Red scarf, purposeful stride. We laugh like children, discovering a secret pattern in the universe. Not another time. The rain traps us inside. The glass fogs, the shelled smell of damp paper, and he leans across the table, voice low. Do you ever feel like we were supposed to meet? He asks. His words hang suspended, like drops about to fall. My heart stammers. Maybe, I whisper, afraid of how much truth is hidden inside that one word. At night, our conversations deepen. He tells me about the loneliness he carries, the silence in his apartment that sometimes feels like it might swallow him whole. I tell him about the ache I've carried for years, the way I've trained myself to smile. Even when my chest feels hollow. There are pauses in our messages, not because we run out of words, but because silence between us feels safe, like the pause between breaths. Then, one night him. If I tell you something, promise you won't laugh? Me. Promise. Him. When you smile, it feels like the world makes sense again. Like maybe all the noise in my head finally quiets down. I stare at the screen, my breath lodged in my chest. My fingers hover, unsure how to carry the weight of his confession without breaking it. Finally me. Then I'll keep smiling. Just for you. It doesn't happen all at once, but slowly I realize I feel seen. Not the surface version of me, the polite nods, the practiced lines, but the raw, unpolished self I usually keep hidden. He doesn't flinch at the shadows. He notices them, names them, and somehow makes them less frightening. And yet, beneath the tenderness, a quiet fear grows. Because to be seen is also to risk being left. One evening, as the bookstore empties and dusk paints the sky in shades of lavender, I catch myself staring at him longer than usual. His laugh shakes loose something buried deep, and suddenly I want to ask, will you stay? Will you keep seeing me when the novelty fades? But the words never leave my mouth. Instead, I ask, what are you thinking about? He looks at me, eyes soft. You, always you. The room tilts. My pulse stumbles. The air feels too fragile for more words, so I just smile, hoping he understands the way my whole being aches at his confession. Weeks later, the texts are no longer just texts. They're phone calls stretching until dawn, his voice a quiet hum in my ear as I lie in bed, the city asleep around me. I wish you were here, he whispers one night. I know, I reply. And the silence after feels heavy with longing, like the space between us is unbearable. Still, shadows creep in. One evening, he grows quiet, his smile dimmed. You ever get scared, he says softly, that something this good can't last? I swallow hard. Every day. He nods, eyes distant, as though staring into some future only he can see. For the first time, I feel a tremor of uncertainty, like we're standing on a fragile bridge, and the wind has just begun to pick up. The bookstore smells of old paper and faint rain, as though the walls themselves have absorbed decades of weather. Afternoon sunlight leans across the aisles, catching dust motes suspended in slow dance. He's already there, waiting. His head is bent over a book, lips curving faintly, and when he looks up, when his eyes find mine, it feels like the room exhales. But before I can cross the aisle, my phone vibrates. One glance at the screen stops me cold. Dad. My hand trembles as I swipe to answer. Hello? His voice is steady, practiced like stone shaped by years of erosion. You haven't called in weeks. Do you remember you still have a family? A knot tightens in my chest. I know, Dad. I've just been busy. Busy, he repeats, the word clipped. Too busy for us? Your mother worries. She says you're drifting. Is this what you want? To waste your life in, what is it now, a bookstore? I glance up. He's watching me from across the room, his brow slightly furrowed, sensing the shift in the air. I turn away, ashamed. It isn't like that, I whisper. I'm not wasting. Then prove it. Come home this weekend. Help with the business, like you promised. Stop running away from responsibility. We didn't raise you to be selfish. The line goes quiet, heavy with expectation. My throat burns. I'll think about it. Think fast. The call ends. Silence presses against me, thick and suffocating. My reflection stares back from the phone screen. Tired eyes, a half-swallowed frown. For a moment, I forget where I am until I hear his footsteps. You okay? His voice is low, careful, like he's approaching a wounded animal. I nod too quickly. Yeah, fine. But the lie sits clumsy between us. He doesn't believe it. I can see it in the way his gaze lingers, soft but searching. Still, he doesn't push. Instead, he gestures toward the back, toward our table tucked in shadow. Come sit. We settle into the familiar quiet. The world beyond these aisles feels miles away, though the weight of my father's words still claws at my chest. He doesn't ask again. He just sits there, flipping through pages, his presence like a steady heartbeat in the silence. At last, he breaks it not with questions, but with a story. When I was a kid, he says softly, I wanted to be an artist. I used to sketch on napkins, in the margins of textbooks, on walls when my mom wasn't looking. My dad caught me once and told me to quit wasting time, said artists starve. I look at him, startled. He shrugs. So I stopped. I traded pencils for practicality. Sometimes I still wonder if I let him decide who I got to be. His eyes lift, catching mine. You don't have to tell me what's wrong. But I know what it feels like to carry someone else's expectations like chains. The words lodge deep. I want to cry, to confess everything, that the guilt feels endless, that every ounce of joy I've found here feels like theft from my family. But all I manage is, I don't know what I'm supposed to choose. You're not supposed to choose, he says gently. You're supposed to live. The bookstore hums with silence again, but it's softer now. My breath steadies. His words linger like a lantern in the dark. We sit there for what feels like hours. Sometimes we talk, small things, favorite films, books that broke us, songs that heal. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Just existing side by side feels like enough. But even in his quiet comfort, shadows press close. My father's voice loops in my head. Stop running. Stop being selfish. At one point, I lean back, staring at the ceiling beams. What if happiness is selfish? He sets his book down, studying me. Then maybe selfishness isn't as ugly as they told us. The simplicity of it stuns me. My throat tightens, my eyes burn, and I laugh choked, trembling. He smiles softly, and for a fleeting second, the weight lifts. Night falls by the time we step outside. The air is cool, the street lamps humming faintly. He walks me toward the corner, hands in his pockets, steps unhurried. You don't have to carry it alone, he says suddenly. Carry what? Whatever that phone call put on your shoulders. I swallow hard. It's not that easy. I know. He stops, turning to me fully. The lamplight cuts across his face, painting half of it in gold, half in shadow. But I'm not going anywhere. Even if all you need is someone to sit in the quiet with you. The sincerity in his voice unravels something inside me. I want to reach for his hand, to close the space between us, but fear keeps me still. Instead, I whisper, thank you. His smile, the one that first drew me in, the one that makes silence feel safe, flickers across his lips. Always. Rain drums against the glass like 1,000 restless fingers, soft but unyielding. The bookstore glows dimly in the storm, golden lamps casting halos over stacks of paperbacks and rows of forgotten poetry. The air carries that familiar blend of dust and ink, grounding and fragile. I slip inside, soaked at the edges, my hoodie clinging damp against my shoulders. He's already there, perched at our corner table in the back. His hair is damp too, curling slightly at the edges, like the storm had chased him in moments before me. "You're late," he says with a grin gentle. Teasing, not accusing. "Blame the weather," I murmur, brushing water from my sleeves. My voice doesn't quite carry the playfulness his does. He notices. His smile softens, dimming at the edges. "Rough day?" The words almost undo me. Because, yes, rough doesn't cover it, not with the echo of Dad's voice still pounding in my skull. "Your tuition depends on this family. On that wedding." "Don't test me, Dot." I drop into the chair across from him. For a moment, I think I can hide it, bury the storm behind a smile. But his eyes hold me quiet, steady, as if he's willing me to speak. And tonight, I can't keep the weight inside anymore. "Do you ever feel like your life isn't really yours?" The words tumble out before I can catch them. He tilts his head, leaning forward slightly. All the time. Something in me cracks open at that, and before I know it, I'm confessing everything. My daddy. He said if I don't go to my sister's wedding, he won't pay my tuition. Like it's some kind of punishment or ransom. My laugh is sharp, bitter. Imagine telling your kid, your education, your future, depends on whether you stand where I want you to stand. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't flinch. His gaze doesn't carry pity only, something deeper, a kind of quiet fury on my behalf. I press on, voice breaking. It feels like my choices don't matter. Like no matter how much I try to step into my own life, he can snatch it away. And maybe I am selfish. Maybe I should just shut up and play along. At least then I'd keep school. The silence that follows feels enormous. I drop my face into my hands, the storm outside rattling louder against the glass. When he finally speaks, his voice is steady measured, but fierce beneath the softness. "You're not selfish. You're surviving." I lift my head. His jaw is set, his eyes sharp in the low light. "He's wrong," he says firmly. "No one gets to hold your worth hostage. Not your father, not anyone." The words hit harder than I expect. For a moment, I can only stare, my breath caught between disbelief and relief. "But if I lose tuition, then you fight another way." His voice lowers, urgent now. "You're not defined by the money someone threatens to withhold. You're more than that." I want to believe him. God, I want to. But doubt claws at me. What if I can't make it without him? "You will," he says without hesitation. "Because you're already braver than you realize. You walked away once, didn't you? You chose yourself over their demands. That matters." The bookstore hums with silence again. My chest aches, but the weight feels lighter, like the storm has begun to loosen its grip. I study him, really study him, the way the lamplight carves gold into his cheekbones, the way his hands rest open, unguarded on the table. He looks at me, not like I'm broken, not like I'm a burden, but like I'm someone worth fighting for. And something shifts. I whisper, "Why do you care so much?" His smile is small, almost shy, but his eyes don't waver. "Because I see you." The words hang in the air electric. My breath stutters, caught between fear and something dangerously close to hope. For a long moment, neither of us moves. The rain swells outside, battering the glass like it wants to break through. My fingers twitch against the table, restless, searching for something to hold on to Dot, and then slowly, almost without thought, his hand slides closer. Inches, then centimeters, until his fingers hover just beside mine. I freeze. My pulse roars in my ears. "Is this okay?" He asks, voice low. The question breaks me. Because no one asks. No one waits. And the tenderness in that single moment permission, choice feels like everything I've been starved of. I nod. Unable to speak. His fingers brush against mine, featherlight. A spark jolts up my arm, searing and fragile all at once. The touch is hesitant, tentative, as though he knows how easily I could pull away. But I don't. I can't. Instead, I turn my hand, letting my palm press against his. Our fingers don't intertwine, not yet. They just rest there, side by side, skin against skin. Simple, uncomplicated, and somehow it feels like the most profound thing in the world. The air thickens. My throat tightens. My heart hammers so hard, I'm afraid he can hear it. He doesn't move, doesn't push. He just lets the silence bloom, letting me feel every ounce of what this means. For the first time in years, I feel steady, anchored, not because the storm is gone, but because someone is willing to stand in it with me. The rain outside eases into a softer rhythm, like the sky itself has exhaled. I glance at him, meeting his gaze. His eyes shine in the dim light, warm and unflinching. And in them, I see something I've been aching for. Belief, not the heavy kind that demands, but the kind that frees. I squeeze his hand, tentative but real. His lips part in a faint, almost disbelieving smile. See? He murmurs. Not selfish, just human. The words lodge deep, weaving themselves into the cracks of my chest. We sit there until the lamps flicker and the owner clears his throat, reminding us gently that the night has to end. But as we rise, neither of us lets go immediately. Our hands linger, palms sliding against each other until the very last second. Outside, the street glistens, washed clean by the storm. The world feels quieter, softer, though the weight of choice still waits for me. Dad's voice still lurks in the shadows. But tonight, for the first time, I don't feel like I'm walking into it alone. The world outside roared with celebration. At least, that's how she imagined it. Drums, brass, the clinking of glasses, and the chatter of relatives congratulating each other for choices that weren't hers. Somewhere, someone would be announcing her absence as an unfortunate incident. Somewhere, someone would be whispering about disgrace. But here it was quiet. The bookstore smelled of paper and coffee beans. The air warm with a kind of safety she hadn't felt in years. Dust floated lazily in the shafts of light from the tall windows, and she thought, if happiness could be bottled, it would smell like this. Across the table sat him, the stranger who didn't feel like one anymore. His sleeves rolled up, a pen tucked behind his ear, his fingers stained with ink like he'd wrestled with words in one. He watched her in that careful way of his, the way someone looks when they're afraid too much noise will break something fragile. "You're quieter than usual," he said finally, his voice low, almost reverent. She shrugged, forcing a smile. "Maybe I've run out of words." "Impossible. You hoard them the way others hoard jewelry." His grin tilted, and she laughed, genuinely laughed, the sound bouncing off the bookshelves. For a moment, the phantom drums in her mind softened. She leaned across the table, whispering conspiratorially, "What if this is my wedding day? Not theirs. Not the one waiting for me with a white dress and strangers clapping. But this, just us, coffee stains and bad handwriting. Wouldn't that be a better ceremony?" He didn't laugh. His eyes lingered on her, dark and unreadable. "It already feels like one." The words pressed against her ribs, sharp and sweet. She had run away from the world, but she couldn't run from her heart. Not when it insisted on beating louder every time he looked at her like that. The hours stretched, but not in the way they usually did. Each one filled itself with small rituals. He tried to teach her how to sketch with his fountain pen, but she only managed ink blots that made him laugh so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. She countered by reciting lines from the novel she had tucked into her bag, her voice dramatic, earning exaggerated gasps from him until the shopkeeper hushed them both. Every moment felt stolen, as though borrowed from a life she wasn't meant to have. She thought of the bridal stage her parents had decorated without her, the lights strung across a hall where guests would murmur questions about her absence. But then she thought of his laughter beside her, the warmth of the coffee mug against her palms, and decided just for today she wouldn't regret it. "You're thinking of them," he said suddenly, pulling her back. His tone wasn't accusing, only knowing. "Of course I am," she admitted. "But then I look at you, and it feels lighter. Like maybe the world doesn't own me anymore." He closed his notebook and leaned forward. Maybe it never did. By late afternoon, the bookstore began to empty. The light shifted, turning golden, brushing against the spines of books like a blessing. She traced the rim of her mug. Her thoughts nodded with gratitude and guilt. "What if," she asked softly, "I regret this one day? Not marrying him, not being there today. What if freedom tastes sweet now but bitter later?" He considered her words carefully, the way he always did. "Then regret it later. But don't waste today. Today, you're free." Her throat tightened. Today, you're free. It felt like a vow, stronger than the ones she was meant to speak under garlands of roses. The ache beneath her ribs deepened. It wasn't just the cost of freedom. It was the cost of wanting someone she wasn't supposed to want. She told herself not to look at him too long, not to let her heart stumble into something dangerous. But then his hand brushed hers on the table, light as a whisper, and the caution dissolved that they left the bookstore as twilight bled into the streets. The city was alive, vendors calling out, the hum of motorbikes, lanterns swinging in the breeze. She walked close to him, the evening air cool against her skin, her heart steady only because his presence steadied it. He stopped at a tea stall, insisting they try the street vendor's brew. They stood shoulder to shoulder, sipping steaming cups, laughing when the sugar clung to the bottom. People bustled around them, but she felt hidden, cocooned in their tiny, ridiculous universe. "You know," he said after a moment, "this is the kind of day people write novels about. The ordinary that feels extraordinary." She smiled into her cup. "Maybe you'll write it one day. Maybe," he said, his gaze lingering. "Or maybe I'll just live it." Night fell quickly, stars breaking open the sky. They found themselves back at the steps of the small boarding house where she'd been hiding. The street was quieter now, the hush of evening carrying with it the weight of unspoken words. She hesitated, her hand resting on the railing. Today felt unreal. "It was real," he said firmly. "Maybe more real than anything else." Her chest ached. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hold on to the illusion that this day could be enough to build a lifetime upon. But reality was waiting, pounding its fists against the edges of her happiness. She turned to him, searching his face. "Do you ever wonder what happens after days like this? When the laughter fades and the world comes knocking?" His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. "I wonder. But I also know I'll keep knocking too, until you open the door again." Something in her broke then, in the softest way. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his, grounding herself in the warmth dot, and yet, even as the night wrapped around them, she knew tomorrow would come with consequences. Inside her room, she stood by the window long after he left, watching the glow of the street lamps blur into the dark. Her dress smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, her fingers still ink-stained. She thought of how her family must be reacting at this very hour. Whispers of betrayal, phone calls, anger simmering. She should have been on a stage, smiling a smile that didn't belong to her. Instead, she was here, in a silence that pulsed with joy and dread alike. Her reflection in the window pane stared back, a bride without a veil, a girl with freedom pressed between her palms like a fragile flower she couldn't afford to drop. The phone rang at dawn. It split through the fragile quiet of the boarding house room, shrill and merciless. She lay there for a heartbeat, staring at the ceiling as though pretending not to hear might make it vanish. But silence couldn't shield her forever. Her hand trembled as she picked up. "Where are you?" Her father's voice was fire and stone. It burned through the line, heavy with the weight of expectations shattered. She swallowed hard. "Baba, do not call me that." The pause afterward was worse than shouting. "Do you know what you've done? Do you understand the disgrace you've written onto our name?" Her throat tightened. The words she had practiced, explanations about freedom, about wanting a different life, dissolved in the face of his fury. You will not come back. Your tuition? Gone. Do not expect us to pay for the life you've chosen. Do not expect calls. Do not expect help. If you can betray us, you can survive without us. Click. The line went dead. The silence afterward was suffocating. She pressed the phone to her chest, as though holding it might undo what had just been severed. But all she could hear was the echo of his voice, each word like a stone thrown at the fragile glass of her resolve. For a long while, she just sat there, knees drawn to her chest. The morning sun leaked weakly through the curtains, a pale witness to her unraveling. By the time she left the room, her eyes burned red, though she hadn't cried. The tears sat somewhere deeper, frozen, refusing to fall. Downstairs in the boarding house cafe, he was already waiting, the stranger who had become her one constant in this unraveling world. He looked up as she approached, reading her face before she could speak. "They called," she nodded. The words stuck like ash in her throat. What did they say? She sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the chipped ceramic mug he pushed toward her. The warmth seeped into her fingers, but not into her bones. "It's over. Tuition, family, everything. I'm cut off." His jaw tightened, but his gaze softened. "I'm sorry." The apology undid her. Not because of pity, but because it wasn't laced with judgment. Just pure acknowledgement. "Do you think I've ruined myself?" she asked, her voice cracking. He leaned forward. "No, I think you've begun." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Begun? Begun what? Poverty? Loneliness?" "Living." His voice was steady, anchored. "For the first time, you're living for yourself. It's terrifying, yes, brutal, but it's real." She looked at him, and for a moment, the cafe around them blurred, the clink of dishes, the chatter of tenants, all fading under the weight of his words. The hours that followed were strange. She drifted through them in a haze. Her mind tugged in two directions. One half imagined her father pacing, her mother silent, relatives clucking their tongues like crows. The other half clung desperately to the stranger's presence, his hand steadying hers when she spilled sugar, his laughter breaking through when she fell into silence too long. By afternoon, the boarding house felt stifling. He suggested a walk. They wandered through narrow lanes, past fruit stalls and children playing cricket with dented cans. The air smelled of spices and rain-soaked earth. She found herself speaking aloud the thoughts that had festered inside. "Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own family? To be treated like a pawn, moved from square to square?" "Yes." His answer was immediate. His eyes were on the sky, but his voice was low. "Not the same way, maybe. But I know what it's like to be unseen, unheard. To choose silence because speaking costs too much." She studied him, realizing she knew so little of his story. Yet here he was, the one person making her own feel less unbearable. "Does it ever stop hurting?" she asked. He turned to her, his expression gentler than the question deserved. "No, but it stops controlling you. And then it becomes strength. They stopped at a tea stall again, a familiar ritual. He bought her a cup, though she insisted she had no money to spare. "I don't need charity," she muttered. "It isn't charity," he said, pressing the cup into her hands. "It's tea. And today you need it." The steam curled between them. She took a sip, the sweetness thick on her tongue. For a moment, she let herself believe him, that this wasn't charity, but care. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "Why stay with me when I'm a mess, when I've lost everything?" He looked at her for a long time, as though weighing honesty against caution. "Ben, because sometimes we don't get to choose who anchors us. And you've anchored me too." The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her chest. She wanted to look away, but his gaze held her still. Evening descended, painting the sky in bruised oranges and deepening blues. Back at the boarding house, she lingered with him on the steps. The street hummed with life. Vendors closing shops, lamps flickering on, laughter from children echoing down alleys. "I don't know how to do this," she confessed, staring at her hands. "I don't know how to build a life from nothing." "You don't have nothing," he replied softly. "You have yourself. That's more than most ever dare to hold on to." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "But what if I fail? What if I regret everything?" He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, tentative yet grounding. "Then fail. Then regret. But keep living. Because the alternative is to go back, and you know you can't." Her chest tightened, equal parts fear and relief. He was right. Going back wasn't an option, even if tomorrow was uncertain. That night, she sat at her window again, the phone silent on her bedside. She scrolled through unanswered messages from cousins, friends, all variations of the same words. "What have you done? Why didn't you think of your family? You've ruined everything. She turned the screen off, pressing it face down. The stranger's words echoed instead, louder than their accusations. "You've begun." The city outside pulsed with its own rhythm. She wondered if somewhere her father still paced. She wondered if her mother had cried. The ache was sharp, but underneath it was something steadier, the faint heartbeat of freedom. The week after her father's call stretched like an endless winter. Days blurred, heavy with the weight of what had been lost. She found herself counting coins before buying bread, considering the price of every bus fare, every cup of tea. Even in the soft light of the bookstore, surrounded by endless worlds of words, reality pressed hard against her ribs. The stranger noticed. Of course he did. He always did. "You're quieter," he said one evening, his hand brushing the spine of a poetry collection. "Not the good kind of quiet. The heavy kind." She gave a small shrug, her fingers lingering over a price tag. Even this book, second-hand, worn, pages stained, was more than she could spare. "I'm fine." He tilted his head, studying her. Fine is a word people use when they're breaking. She met his gaze, and something in her cracked. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to keep studying, how to survive without help. I thought love could carry me, but maybe it's not enough." The words hit him like a blow. He leaned back, his jaw tightening. "Not enough? I didn't mean—" "No," he cut in, his voice sharper than she'd ever heard. "Don't do that. Don't take it back just because it sounds cruel. Say it. Do you think this us isn't enough?" Her chest tightened. The bookstore around them seemed to hold its breath. "I think life is bigger than love," she whispered. "Rent is bigger than love. Tuition is bigger than love. And I'm terrified that we're building something beautiful on ground that's already collapsing." The silence that followed was raw. For the first time, she saw pain flash across his face, not the quiet empathy he always offered, but something deeper, wounded. "I thought—" He swallowed, his voice trembling. I thought what we had was the one thing they couldn't take from you. It is, she said, desperate, reaching for him. But what if it's not enough to survive? His hand slipped from hers. He walked away just a few paces, but it felt like miles. He turned, his eyes dark. So what are you saying? That you regret this? The question sliced her open. No, God, no. Then stop talking about it like it's fragile. Like it's going to vanish the second the world gets hard. His voice rose, catching the attention of the old shopkeeper, who glanced up from his counter. Heat flamed her cheeks. I'm scared, she said, louder now, her throat raw. I don't know how to stop being scared. That night, they didn't part with laughter like they usually did. No jokes about the books they'd never buy. No promises of tomorrow. Just a quiet, strained goodbye. She lay awake in her room, the words replaying like broken glass in her head. Not enough. Not enough. Sleep came fitful, broken by dreams of her father's voice, her mother's silence, and his eyes when she had doubted. The next day, they met again, almost by instinct, as though their bodies refused to obey the anger their words had created. The air was taut, fragile. Every glance weighted. He finally broke the silence. I can get more shifts at the cafe. Her heart twisted. That's not the answer. It's something, he countered. It keeps you in school. It keeps us from... He stopped, exhaling sharply. From falling apart. She reached for his hand. I don't want you breaking yourself just to hold me together. He squeezed her fingers, his voice quiet now. And I don't want you breaking us because you're afraid. Her throat closed. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. We're fighting so much already. Because it matters, he said firmly. Because we matter. The days that followed were a fragile dance between tension and tenderness. They argued in whispers, then laughed an hour later. They snapped at each other over bus fares, then shared bread on the steps of the bookstore, tearing it in half with quiet smiles. Love became less of a fairy tale, more of a battle. Yet in every battle, there was proof of how fiercely they cared. One night, in the small hours when the city outside lay hushed, they sat side by side on her bed, the air heavy with everything unsaid. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't. His hand brushed her cheek, tentative but certain. But you have to believe in us as much as I do, even when it's hard. She leaned into his touch, the ache in her chest both sharp and sweet. I'm trying. That's all I ask. Their lips met then, not in the heat of passion, but in the tenderness of survival. A kiss that tasted of tears, of exhaustion, of desperate love clinging to the edges of ruin. Morning light poured pale through her curtains, spilling over their tangled hands. She watched him sleep for a moment. The lines of his face softened, the tension eased. For the first time in days, she felt a sliver of peace, yet underneath it, fear still pulsed. The world had not changed overnight. Rent still loomed. Tuition still hung by a thread, and her family silence stretched endlessly. But beside her, he breathed steady, anchoring her to something real. She thought then of what he had said. We matter. And though the fear remained, she felt a seed of belief take root. Later that day, as they walked past the tea stall, he slipped his arm through hers. His thumb traced small circles against her wrist, grounding. You know, he said softly, love doesn't mean life gets easier. I know. It just means we face it together. She looked at him then, really looked, at the weariness in his eyes, at the determination beneath it. And for the first time since her father's call, she let herself imagine a future not of perfection, but of persistence. That night, after another long study session in the bookstore's back corner, she closed her notebook and looked at him. Do you ever think we're building something out of ruins? She asked. He smiled faintly, though his eyes were serious. Yes, But sometimes ruins are the strongest foundations, because what's left standing after everything else has fallen, that's the part that lasts. Her breath caught. The words settled in her chest like embers, glowing even as doubt flickered at the edges. The first letter begins on a night when the city is quiet, as though the whole world has folded in on itself. Rain leans against the window pane in a gentle, steady rhythm, like a clock reminding them of the time they no longer feel. The desk lamp pools soft gold across blank paper. The pen, trembling between their fingers, feels heavier than it should, as if it carries years of silence within it. Dear Father. The words freeze on the page, a skeleton of what they ache to say. Their throat tightens. Every memory of him rushes forward at once. His stern silence, his worn-out hands, his eyes that carried both love and disappointment, but rarely spoke either. The protagonist exhales sharply, their chest burning with the words they've never been able to speak aloud. They lean into the page. I know you thought silence was strength. I know you believed love was sacrifice, that providing was enough. But I needed your words. I needed your voice saying, I'm proud of you. And now, even as I write this, knowing you'll never read it, I wonder if I'll ever stop needing that. The ink smudges as a tear falls, darkening the paper. Their hand hovers uncertain before continuing. You gave me shelter. You gave me rules. But you never gave me the space to be seen. And maybe that's why I've lived half my life invisible. The pen shakes. They close their eyes, steadying themselves. When they finish, the page looks raw, vulnerable, as if their heart has been flayed open in black and white. They fold it, slip it into an envelope, and tuck it into the drawer with a trembling finality. Not to send. Never to send. But writing it feels like tearing down the first brick of a wall that has stood too long. The second letter is hardered out. Their sister's laugh echoes in memory, high, bright, ringing like bells in summer air. They see her as she was, braiding flowers into her hair, whispering secrets under blankets, promising eternal loyalty and the kind of vows only children believe in. And then they see her walking away, leaving silence in her wake. A silence filled with years of unanswered questions. Dear sister. The words bleed slow, as though they resist being written. I used to count the days waiting for you to come home. Every knock on the door, every ring of the phone, I thought it would be you. But when you left, you didn't just leave Father. You left me too. And I never understood why. Was I not worth staying for? Was love not enough? Their chest tightens, sharp, aching. I hated you for it. I still do sometimes. And yet, I miss you. Every time something good happens, I think, I should tell her. Every time I fall apart, I wish you were there to help pick up the pieces. But you're gone. And maybe you always will be. Their hand stills. For a moment, the pen refuses to move. Then, softer. I forgive you anyway, because carrying the weight of anger feels heavier than your absence. They drop the pen, the sound small but final in the quiet room. They fold this letter too, pressing the paper flat, though their hands shake as though smoothing wrinkles in memory itself. And then, unexpectedly, the third letter isn't to anyone else. It begins with 2 words. Dear me. The silence after is deafening. The air feels different, as though the room itself is holding its breath. They stare at the page, realizing how foreign this feels, to address themselves as someone worthy of being spoken to. I don't know how to love you yet. I don't know how to forgive you for every mistake, every failure, every time you stayed quiet when you wanted to scream. But I'm trying, and maybe that's enough for now. The words come easier, quicker, almost like breathing. You've survived so much. You carry scars no one sees. And still, you are here. Still, you are writing. Still, You are fighting for a voice in a world that told you to stay silent. I think that makes you extraordinary, even if you don't believe it yet. Their chest warms as they write, as though speaking these words aloud might finally make them true. From there, the habit begins. Each night, they return to the desk. Some nights it's letters, unsent apologies, unsent anger, unsent confessions. Other nights it's stories, fragments of dreams stitched into characters who look a little like them, who say the things they've never dared to. A girl who stands in a storm and doesn't flinch. A boy who learns to sing when he's never spoken. A family that forgives, even when broken. The stranger's voice, your words matter, lingers in their memory like a candle that never burns out. They write until their hand cramps, until their eyelids grow heavy, until the ink stains their fingers like proof of a battle fought and won on paper. One evening, as dusk bruises the sky into shades of purple and rose, they read back through what they've written. The pages stack higher than they realized, a tower of words built out of silence. Their chest swells with something unfamiliar, pride. For the first time, they don't feel invisible dot, but alongside that pride comes fear. Because writing for themselves is safe. Sharing it, letting someone else see the raw edges of their soul, feels like stepping into fire. They think of the stranger, the way he looked at them, as though he could see through every layer they'd hidden. The way his words still echo. Would he read them? Would he understand? The thought both terrifies and thrills. That night, under the pale glow of the lamp, they begin one more letter. This one is different. Not to father, not to sister, not even to themselves. Dear you? The ink flows steady, unshaken. I don't know why your words mattered so much. Maybe because no one else ever believed in me the way you did. Or maybe because, for the first time, I saw myself the way you saw me. Worth something. Worth speaking. Worth being heard. Their heart pounds. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to give this to you. But if I do, I hope you'll understand. You helped me begin again. The pen drops. Their breath trembles. They fold the page, tucking it into the growing pile. But this one feels different. This one hums in their chest, alive with possibility dot as they blow out the lamp. Darkness folds around them. Yet within that darkness, something glows, fragile but steady, like a flame refusing to die. The morning light spills through the thin curtains, golden and soft, as if the universe itself is reminding them that endings don't have to be abrupt. Sometimes they're gentle, like dawn bleeding into the sky. The protagonist sits at the same desk where their words were once shackled to silence. Now it's covered in pages, essays, stories, applications, letters never sent. Each one a piece of themselves they thought they'd lost. Their chest feels tight, but not with fear. With readiness. School is no longer a dream deferred. They've pieced together enough. A scholarship from an essay they nearly didn't submit. Long evenings tutoring children in the neighborhood. Late night shifts at the bookstore where the smell of paper inked itself into their clothes. Piece by piece, a path has emerged. Fragile, but theirs. The stranger, no, not a stranger anymore, sits across the table. His hand brushes against theirs as he looks over another form, his brow furrowed in concentration. You've done more than most people could, he murmurs, tapping the page. You built this, all of it, with your own hands. They swallow the lump rising in their throat. I thought I needed someone to save me. He looks up, his eyes meeting theirs with unwavering softness. You didn't. You only needed someone to remind you that you could. That night, they walked together through the city. The streets hum with life, laughter spilling from cafes, neon lights buzzing like restless dreams, the smell of roasted chestnuts curling through the air. The rain has just ended, leaving the cobblestones slick, reflecting the kaleidoscope of lights above. They pause on the bridge where they once stood alone, staring at their reflection in the river's black surface. Tonight, they are not alone. His hand finds theirs, warm and steady. "Do you still write?" He asks, his voice barely louder than the wind. They nod. "Every night? For yourself?" "For myself. And maybe one day for others too." He smiles, the kind that feels like sunlight after a long storm. "And you've already won. But it isn't always easy. There are still arguments about rent, about exhaustion, about the constant juggle between work and school. Sometimes their voices rise sharp against the walls, heavy with fear disguised as frustration. One evening, when the bills sit scattered across the kitchen table, the weight of it all presses down until it bursts. This isn't sustainable. They snap, pacing the room. "I can't keep studying, working, and pretending like it's all fine." It's not fine. He watches them quietly, his jaw tense. "I know it's not. But we'll figure it out together. I don't want together to mean you're carrying me. I don't want independent to mean you're carrying it all alone." He shoots back, his voice rising now to silence, the kind that trembles, thick and fragile. They collapse into a chair, burying their face in their hands. "I don't know how to do this." He kneels in front of them, gently pulling their hands away. His eyes are steady, unwavering. "Then let's not pretend we do. Let's stumble through it, together. That's all love is, isn't it? Choosing to stumble forward side by side." Their throat tightens, tears blurring the edges of everything. They whisper, "I'm so scared." He presses his forehead to theirs. "So am I, but fear doesn't mean we stop. It means we keep going anyway." And in that moment, love feels less like fireworks and more like an anchor, something that holds steady in the storm. Weeks pass. Seasons shift. Their world reshapes itself not with grand gestures, but with small victories. Passing grades. A paycheck that stretches just far enough. A night spent laughing instead of worrying. They begin to dream again. Not vague dreams, but specific ones. A future where words are their compass, where stories are both survival and gift. They picture books with their name on the spine, classrooms filled with young voices encouraged to speak. One evening, while sorting through papers, they stumble across the letter they wrote to him, the one that began, "Dear you." Their heart pounds as they unfold it, the words raw and trembling but alive. They hesitate, then press it into his hands. "What's this?" He asks, brow arched. "Something I wrote. A long time ago. Before I believed I could say it out loud." He reads in silence. His eyes move slowly, his breath catching at certain lines. When he finally looks up, there's a sheen of tears in his gaze. "You've carried this all this time?" "I was afraid," they admit. Afraid of being too much. Or not enough. He shakes his head, reaching across the table to take their hand. "You've always been enough. More than enough. I only wish you'd believed it sooner." For the first time, they don't shrink from those words. They let them land. They let them stay, and then comes the day of departure. The acceptance letter lies open on the desk, the ink still as sharp as the first time they read it. Their name printed beneath the words. "We are pleased to offer you admission." The suitcase waits in the corner, half packed with books, clothes, and fragments of a life they are finally ready to expand. Their father hasn't called. Their sister hasn't written. The silence remains, a shadow stretching behind them. But for the first time, it doesn't define them. Standing at the station, with the train rumbling like a heartbeat in the distance, they take one last look at the city that broke and built them. He is beside them, carrying nothing but a bag slung over his shoulder and an unwavering presence in his eyes. "Are you ready?" he asks. They breathe deeply, the air cool and alive in their lungs. "I don't know if anyone's ever ready." He smiles, brushing a strand of hair from their face. "Then let's just go anyway." The train whistles, loud and piercing. A call to the unknown dot. They step forward, suitcase wheels clattering against the platform. Each step feels like writing a sentence in a story no one else has authored. Their story dot as they board. They glance back once more. The city glows in the distance, not as a cage, but as the prologue of everything yet to come. Inside the train, the seats hum with quiet conversation. The world beyond the window blurs into streaks of green and gold as the train begins to move. They lean their head against his shoulder. Do you ever wonder how it all ends? He pauses, thoughtful. I don't think it does. I think we just keep choosing. Over and over. Every day. They close their eyes, letting the rhythm of the train steady their heartbeat. And I choose this. I choose us. I choose me. And with those words, the weight of years of silence finally lifts.